Great. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our call this evening. I can see, that's what I see. I can see lots of cameras off, which would be lovely if you can briefly come on if you're not eating your dinner. Or, yeah, that's lovely. And in essence, it really honors our special guest speaker tonight, who I will make an official introduction as soon as we have everybody online. For those coming in, please, tonight will be interpretations in Spanish and Portuguese. So if you can see somewhere on the bottom of your Zoom screen, either it'll be there as interpretation or it'll be more. Click on that and choose the language of your choice, which will be fantastic. And once Steve's finished, there will be some time for questions. But to avoid the rush, I'm asking you, please, can you put your questions into the chat? And we'll do our best, depending on the time available for us, to get through them. If for any reason you're at the bottom of the list and your question doesn't get answered, please don't take it personally. It's just a question of how many we have. Good. So, 7:30. What a pleasure it is to be here. I'm seeing people coming in from all over Europe, which is fantastic. And even we've got America online, and I believe South Africa will be coming in a bit later too. So here's the croaky voice again. So tonight I have the pleasure of introducing a marathon legend with more miles under his trainers than most people have on their cars. He isn't just a runner, he's a running legend with a knack for turning pavements, paths and tracks into the yellow brick road of his momentous quest. His idea of a normal day is running a mere half marathon before work, when he was working. And the way he's been going, the Guinness Book of Records might have to consider adding a few pages to be able to catalogue all his feats. He's a man that for the last 43 years, unknown to many, has been leading from the front and inspiring tens of thousands with his vision, drive, tenacity and commitment as he's continued on his incredible journey. He is a testament to human resilience and the relentless pursuit of excellence. And for me and many, many people, his unyielding spirit that's driven him forward has inspired us all to embrace our own challenges with courage and tenacity. So, if you ever find yourself thinking, who, if anyone on earth, would voluntarily run 26,200 miles, and that's from London to Cape Town, and then back again, and almost all the way back to Cape Town the second time, and whilst maintaining an average speed of almost 8 miles an hour when he was running? Well, dearest people, look no further. For it is indeed the man in the machine, and he's someone who continues to lace up, chase dreams, and redefine what it means to be a true marathon legend. Great to see so many cameras on, guys. So please, if you're not on camera, just for the last couple of seconds, please come on right now so we can give somebody who's inspired me, and as I said, many, many people. I'll just stop there. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me enormous pleasure to introduce Mr. Steve Edwards. Thank you, Steve.
Well, thank you, Mark, for that really, really kind introduction. And I'd just like to say thank you to you all for inviting me to your call tonight. The aim of tonight really is to sort of tell you my story, and that I'll do from the very start, and give you a few secrets of my success. And also talk about how Manatech have been involved, certainly for a big part of that journey as well. So the beginning really does start in 1981, and it started off as a tender 18-year-old, naive, teenager basically. Saw a poster advertising a marathon, decided I'd have a go for it. Did everything wrong, didn't prepare properly at all because I didn't know really how to. And you could say, being naive, really, it was bliss. Got to halfway, without too much problem. I was sort of had a good natural fitness. I was doing martial arts and going to the gym anyway at the time. And then a couple of miles later, I learned the hard way what a marathon's all about when my legs didn't seem to want to go further any forward. So yeah, it was a bit of a struggle to get to the end. But once I got to the end, I wasn't too far outside the time that I thought I might finish. And, you know, I thought I'd conquered the world at that point. The next day, however, and for several days afterwards, not being able to walk properly, I vowed I'd never run a marathon again. Little did I know that day, you know, would be the day that would change my life forever. What I discovered was a sport where I'd found a new self-found confidence. I found camaraderie in a sport which I didn't even know existed, and you know, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I realised it was a sport that I know not only could I do myself, I could train with other people as well. I could join the club, and you know, running became my sport. And I ran different distances over the next few years, including a few more marathons. And it was always the marathon really that I went back to as being the one for me. And in 1988, I decided to run a dozen marathons, one a month, to raise some money for charity. By the end of that year, I'd actually run 20 marathons and raised quite a lot of money for Great Ormond Street. And at the same time, I'd also met a couple of other runners who were part of a very small, little known group known as the 100 Marathon Club. And the purpose of the 100 Marathon Club really was for people to try and run 100 marathons in their lifetime. Straight away, I was hooked into that. I was 26 at the time, and I decided I would try and go for a record for becoming the youngest person to run 100 marathons. Everything went really well. I got faster, I got quicker. I learned a lot about long distance running, about marathon running, multi-marathon running, that is running lots of marathons in a relatively short period of time. In 1990, I achieved that first world record of becoming the youngest person to run 100 marathons, and that was at the age of 28. That's since been broken, but that's what records are there for, so that's fine. From there, it was a case then of really looking at other records that I could perhaps go for, and I was still young enough and hungry enough, and you know, I was still learning and still getting quicker. So the next record I decided to go for was to try and go for the most marathons running in a calendar year. A British chap had just set the new record at 71 marathons. There was an American chasing that record at the same time as me, and I think he ended up in the high 70s. But pleased to say that by the end of 1990, well, just into 1992, I achieved that second world record by completing 87 marathons in that 1 year. So that was world record number 2. And really from there, it was about trying to see what I could, you know, what else I could do. And during that time, during those first few years, there was one record in particular which I saw in the Guinness Book, and it was a record involving a really, really high number of marathons. This is 500 marathons, and the guy who'd completed them was an American, and he'd not only ran 500 marathons, but he'd done it in an average finish time of just over 3.5 hours. And you know, that resonated with me because not only was he chalking up a huge number of marathons, but he was doing so in a, you know, an extremely good finish times. But to me, the question was, could somebody run 500 marathons averaging under 3.5 hours? And that became my life goal at the time. So I thought, you know, when would I like to finish that? So this was about sort of 1993, 1994, and I was thinking sort of 2012 which would be my 50th birthday. And I set myself that goal. And I was ticking away quite nicely. And then we got to 2008, and 2 significant things happened that year. Firstly, I entered an event for the second time that I'd done the previous year, which was known as the 10 Marathons in 10 Days event. It was in the UK, in a county called Cumbria. Quite a tough course, but having gone there the previous year and not done as well as I really wanted to. I came back and made some changes to my training, went back in 2008 and set the first ever world record for running the fastest 10 marathons in 10 consecutive days. So at that point, I'm thinking, you know, I'm well on my way now to 500. Got to about 450 marathons at that point. Was well on course to sort of achieve that record in 2012 for the 500. And then out of the blue one day, I get a call from somebody who starts talking about these products from Manatech and how they might help improve, you know, my marathon running, make me run faster, help with my recovery, all this sort of thing. Now, I'd always been a big believer in good nutrition. It was one of the main parts of, you know, if you like, the secret of my success. So at first I was a little dubious and I thought, well, you know, I'm already doing what I can nutrition-wise. I can't see how else, you know, I can be helped. And I'll just achieve this world record, of course. So, but anyway, it was a case of, well, you know, nothing ventured, nothing gained sort of thing. I had nothing to lose and I decided to give them a go. And to my complete surprise, I would say 2 to 3 weeks after being on a range of these products, I found that I was able to recover a lot quicker from my training sessions. And because I was recovering quicker, I was able to put in more quality into my training sessions, more intensity. I could increase the frequency of my more intense training sessions. And of course, this all resulted in gradually starting to get better performances in my marathon races. The other important thing that I noticed was that I found that I was recovering much quicker than, you know, the normal to my after each and every marathon. So I was able to actually start running marathons more frequently. So you could say at that point I was hooked. Nutrition completely changed. And I adopted a completely new regime, which included the Manatech products. And I have to say, since that time in 2008, I've never looked back. Suffice to say, the 500 marathons in the sub 3:30 average finish time, I actually achieved that in 2010, 2 years early. And by 2012, I'd actually improved that record of 500 marathons with a sub 3:15 average. So not only had I taken just a few minutes off the average finish time of the American, I'd taken something like 20 minutes average finish time per marathon off. And that record has still got to be broken. That's still yet to be broken. Now, the whole point of the 500 was a lifetime. It was a lifetime kind of target, really, because I genuinely thought that after 500 marathons, I wouldn't be fit for a lot else. But the thing was, I didn't feel that bad, and I felt like I could give it quite a bit more. I still had good energy, good stamina, good strength. Speed was still good, and I was still knocking out, you know, fairly reasonable marathon times. And the consistency of the marathons that I was running was still good. So I decided to carry on, and I thought, well, I could see if I can get to 600. 600 came and went, so I thought, let's go for 700. And I get to 700, and just past 700, I'm starting to think it, but not really wanting to say it. But other people are starting to notice that perhaps there's a chance that we could take this all the way to 1,000 marathons. Now, in all the records that I've tried to, in all my multi-marathon running targets and records, what I've tried to achieve is not just quantity, but also an element of quantity. And to be a successful multi-marathon runner, and you know, generally anywhere, it's not just about quantity. It is about the quality, but it's also about consistency and maintaining that consistency over a long period of time. So the most important aspect of multi-marathon running and setting huge targets, huge records, is really the longevity of that person. Whereas a lot of athletes maybe have a lifespan of so many years, or they get to the point where they feel they can't achieve their best, and they start peaking and then they start dropping from that. You know, it really is a case of trying to get that belief in yourself and maintain the discipline, the motivation. I'm not going to admit that that motivation is still the same today as it was many years ago. But it is that has basically kept me going, along with a very good nutrition plan. So I publicly declared that I would attempt to go for the 1,000 marathons and set a new world record for running 1,000 marathons in the fastest average finish time. And I was hoping to do it in sub 3 hours 20 minutes for every single marathon, which I thought at the time was a reasonable target to chase. It's still going to be difficult, still going to be very challenging, but you know, I believed in my training regime, I believed in the products I was using, and everything else that I was doing. I was basically, you know, taking every single precaution and planning methodically with every race that I ran and my training and everything, you know, that I could achieve this. And everything was going really, really well. And of course, I'd set a target. I thought I need a target date. So I'd set a target date for my 60th birthday, which was in 2022. And then it all went wrong at the beginning of 2020, of course, in the early part of 2020, when the whole world stopped with COVID. Now, the first couple of months with the lockdowns, I kind of treated as though I carried on training, and I treated it as like a rest period, and I'll pick up again afterwards. And then things opened up and we started getting back into events again, and everything seemed to be fine, and the momentum just carried on from where it left off. But then, as everybody knows, we were locked down again, and then we had the winter lockdowns. And during that period, it did go pretty badly, because all of a sudden I'm beginning to wonder whether, you know, life will ever return to normal again. And the momentum that I'd built up over many, many years, and everything that the way that I trained was geared around continually running marathons most weeks, if not most fortnights. That all came to a halt. So this time it wasn't a case of thinking, oh, well, I'll just treat it like a rest, because I thought I can't keep stopping and then restarting and stopping and then restarting, because, you know, from a physiological point of view, my body, it just wouldn't work. So I really went through a bad spell there where I had to give myself a good kick up the backside and believe that, you know, it all starts to come right. And once the event started again, I really did struggle for a period just to get the momentum going again. The problem was, by that stage, that I was starting to develop little niggles and little injuries that I'd not really had before. And I think this was a result of that momentum being lost. So that was probably the hardest point of it all. I had a few regrets at that point about going public on declaring I'd go for this 1,000 marathons record, because I really did want to stop. But I guess you could say I am a stubborn person, and in the end, just sheer willpower, you know, basically made me carry on. So here we are today. I'll be 62 at the end of this year. But all being well, I do hope to achieve that 1,000 marathons record on May the 6th at Milton Keynes. And my current average finish time is 3 hours 21 minutes. So I'll be about a minute and a half over what I originally intended to try and run them at. Yeah, COVID just didn't help, but fingers crossed, touch wood, you know, that will happen. I'm currently on 996 marathons, so we've got 4 to go. Made sure there's a little bit of time in the bank in case anything happens, anything doesn't quite go to plan. That's the way I've always tried to go for these records, have contingency plans and plan Bs and plan Cs, because you know, it doesn't always go to plan when you try and set a goal in life. And you know, this is the way I've tried to work with my running as well. So that covers that part of the story. And I've already alluded to the fact about how being a successful multi-marathon runner, you know, just relies on not just quantity and quality, but yes, consistency and indeed longevity. And when I think back to when I first started in 1981, we're talking running marathons over 5 decades, and it's quite, you know, I think about that sometimes, and I just can't quite believe that I've been able to achieve that level of running, if you like, that all the distances that I've ran, all the mileage that I've ran, and as Mark alluded to at the beginning, the 26,200 miles, that's just marathon racing miles. You can triple that figure if you add in all my training. You know, I'm running probably 50 to 60 miles a week most weeks, and that's been going on week after week, month after month, every year now for the last probably 37, 38 years, which, when I also describe to you now what a marathon really involves, if you think about a marathon, so we're looking at, and I'll say in metric, is 42 kilometers, just over 42 kilometers. So you're talking about 42 and a bit thousand meters. And if you think of that in steps that you might count during the day on your Fitbit or whatever, with an average stride length, you may be looking at something like 34,000, 35,000 steps. And every time you take a step and you land on each foot, you are putting a load of 3 to 4 times your body weight through every joint in your body. So when you look at it like that, you do realize just how brutal a marathon race is. If you're running it at speed, if you're running it to the best of your ability, you're not stopping, you're not walking, you're not taking a rest halfway around, all that kind of thing. You are literally going from start to finish as fast as you possibly can. It is in itself a brutal event. And when you think of the joint load and what's going through your body, so through your ankles, your knees, your hips, through your back, it's little wonder that most people have to run a marathon. They ache all over the next day. And as I say, the stiffness in the legs as well. And yet I found a way to try and overcome all of that. And nutrition has helped massively with this, but also very good training, which involves not just running, but core work, strength training, such that you can make your body run marathons day after day after day, and not just get round, but literally run them and race them to the point that you know you can do 10 marathons in 10 days and set world records for the fastest time to run them. So the durability aspect of your body really is important. So for me, 2 massive factors come into play. It's the training to make your body as bulletproof as possible, but the nutrition as well has become so much more important, especially as I've got older. You can get away with a lot more when you're younger, as everybody knows. But as I've got older, I've realised, you know, I've had to train a little bit smarter. You know, just by virtue of the fact you're getting older, your recovery isn't quite as good as it used to be. It's a little bit harder to maintain the speed, and the speed that you run at just does start to tail off a little bit. Luckily in running, you do have what's called age graded times. So even though my times have slipped gradually over the last few years, when I age grade them back to how they would compare with a 20 or 30-year-old runner, they're still better than I was running in my 20s and 30s. So that's the way I convince myself that I'm still running as well as I used to, even though my times are actually slower. What are my other secrets? Well, I'll go into nutrition in a minute, but I guess one of the things I've always applied to myself is what I call the 4 Ds. And these are discipline, dedication, desire, and determination. They are in some sort of order, because obviously without discipline, it's very difficult. Well, it's very difficult to not only start, but also to continue. Sometimes it's difficult to start, but once you've started, then you've got to keep going. Dedication, that means for me, you know, when the sun's shining, yeah, happy days. You can go out and do your training. You can go out and race. It's lovely. It's fine. but you've got to make sure you're prepared to go out in all weathers, 12 months of the year, whether it's snowing, icy, pouring down in rain, hurricane or gale force winds. You've got to put up with a lot. And I've never been one for running on the treadmill unless I really have to. So it's always been a case of running outside. And for me, that's one of the beauties of why I started running in the first place as well, because I just found it so therapeutic to be able to get outside and just run. Look at the scenery, just listen to the natural, just nature really. And aside from the physical aspects of it, the mental aspects in terms of how that's helped me over the years, deal with a whole load of things in life. I can't even begin to describe how valuable that is. I've always described running basically as the best medicine in the world. And I will never change that view. What's my other secrets? Well, I do have a very, very loving and understanding partner in Teresa. And, without Teresa's loyal support over many, many years. And we were just totting up the other day, actually, just how many marathons she's been to support me. And we think it's about 750 since we first met. So, that is dedication in itself, just to go and support somebody. And she not only supports me, but she's also very supportive of other runners, to the point that we've become known as Team Edwards over the years. And that has been recognised by quite a lot of people on the marathon running circuit. And quite recently, we were very honoured to be told that they would be the Milton Keynes Marathon, quite a big event in quite a big event in the UK, have set up what's called the Team Edwards Lifetime Achievers Award, and they're going to use that as a legacy, basically, on the back of this world record for future people taking part in the event who may have a compelling story of dedication and commitment, which involves running. So, we were incredibly flattered to hear about this, and the fact that it's Team Edwards, to reflect not only my dedication but also Teresa's dedication, we thought was a really nice touch. So that was brilliant. So the other secret, really, and it's not really a secret. I mean, nutrition for me has played a massive part in being able to achieve this record and the record since 2008. And as I say, that 2008 and that call that I had was a massive turning point in what I've been able to achieve. The thing is, people can just say, well, yeah, I've done this and that's helped, and I've done this and that's helped, and whatever. But me being the person that I am, I've always needed proof, scientific backup. I need to know that it's not just a case of taking it and you think, well, it should help, or it might help, or it could have helped. So I've actually got some numbers here, which I'm going to share with you. I was going to describe them, but it's better just to show them on a slide. So I'm going to share that with you now. Hopefully you can all see that. Yeah. So this was pre and post Manatech. So April 1988 is when I started on my multi-marathon running journey. So we're looking at 20 years up to June, age 25 to 45. And during that time, I ran 450 marathons on my way to the then Lifetime Challenger 500. So we're talking roughly one every 16 days. My average finish time over that period is 3 hours, 19 minutes. July 2008, start taking Manatech products. And if I take it right up to April 2024, which is next month, when I will have, well, by the beginning of May, completed around 550 marathons, aged 45 to 61. Average finish time, of course, it's going to be slightly slower with my age, but as I said, from the age graded times, that actually works out quicker than the average finish times I was running in that age category. So I hope everybody understands that part of it. The thing is, that's one every 10.5 days, and you can see the massive comparison in those periods. And actually, when you take out the 18 months that I lost for the COVID years, it's not actually 1 every 10.5 days. I think it works out at 1 every 9.5 days. So to me, that tells me that tells a massive story. And this is why I always say I can't thank Mannatech enough for the support they've given me over the years, and also for that very first introduction to the products, and also not poo-pooing the idea and giving them a try. And I've always been a firm believer in this kind of thing. And I think back to that very first marathon that I ran, and it kind of tells me about some of the things in life which are important. And one of the things I learned very early on is about taking an opportunity, because taking an opportunity, A, you don't know when an opportunity will arise again, and B, you don't know where that opportunity might lead. And to me, it is worth taking every opportunity that comes your way, because who knows where it might end up. For me, I ended up breaking several marathon running world records. It changed my life. It enabled me to travel to places around the world that I've never ever traveled to, plus Teresa as well. We've made many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of friends. There's not a race that we wouldn't go to and be known by lots of people running in that race. And just when I compare to how I was at school, I was born with a deformed left hand. I was bullied, more taunted, mental sort of bullying rather than physical bullying. And you got used to it, because back in those days, in the 60s and 70s, you just took it on the chin. There was not the protection that you might necessarily get today. And then I think to the way I'm treated now as a successful multi-marathon runner, and the respect and the kudos and the two attitudes towards me couldn't be any different from one end of the spectrum to the other. And I think this is probably why I've had the driving force over the years, because of what happened to me as a child. It's certainly been a major factor, and it's almost like I've had a point to prove. But through that having a point to prove, I do believe firmly that it's enhanced my life and the life of my wife Teresa. And as I say, it's not just been about running, it's been about a proper journey, and we've learned a hell of a lot, and we've traveled a hell of a lot, and we've met a lot of very, very interesting people, and that's all been fantastic. I'm going to put another slide up. I think this is the one. Okay. So can everyone see that? Yep. And they're just a few, really, just to cover some of the records that I've achieved, and some of the statistics up to current day, really. And suffice to say, and I'm going to touch wood here, no DNFs, which basically is I did not finish. So every marathon I've ever started, every race I've ever started, I've always finished. And I have come close a few times to not finishing for one reason or another, but I've always so far found it within me to get to the finish line no matter what. And that's where the determination really comes in within the 4Ds. And it really does become, as I say, a massive mental thing as well as physical at that point. I'm going to run through some of the products that I use just very quickly, because I'm aware of the time. So, definitely Ambrotose, and I also take Nutrivirus, and these really the mainstay of the products I use, just to maintain good overall health, and obviously help massively with my recovery. The immune system gets a massive battering when you're training hard all the time and running distance events. You take a lot out of your body, and obviously your immune system then becomes more susceptible to getting compromised. So Immunostat is definitely on the important list there. From a recovery perspective, in terms of muscles, I've always used TruePlenish, or Osaline in the past. And I actually make myself quite a useful recovery drink after a very hard training session or most marathon races that I run. So it'll be Immunostar Complete, and I mix it with Ambrotose and Nutravirus. And that's what I use basically as a recovery drink after I finished. Impact, great energy drink. Wasn't around in the early days, but it's been around for the last few years, and this I found to be brilliant during a race. Not every race I can use Impact because it depends on the race, whether it's a multi-lap event. If it's a multi-lap event, I can take my own drinks and know that I can use them as I complete each lap. Did a track marathon, believe it or not, the weekend just before the weekend, and that was 106 laps. So I was able to use Impact quite a bit on that, which was great. Next on the list really is Bounce Back, and does what it says on the tin. You know, it's a great anti-inflammatory, all natural, of course. So very useful for me with the wear and tear and on my joints and muscles, and just basically help to keep me going. And on a similar vein, the omega-3 as well, with the joint care and also with the heart health. Find that, you know, that has also benefited me massively. Last but not least, GI essentially because of the value it gives in terms of being able to absorb all the nutrients of the foods that I eat. It's massive, you know, that is very important to me. It's important to most people, I would say. And then, of course, GI Pro, because having a healthy gut, again, you know, without a healthy gut, it starts to affect massively in other parts of your life. And certainly when you're an athlete, you know, that is really important. So they're the main products that I tend to use. And yeah, long may that continue. I'm just going to whiz through these slides very quickly because I don't know what else I've got. Do they get any easier? No, they don't. Especially when it's 90 degrees like it was that particular day, and I was just, yeah, absolutely crushed at the end. But you know, we got the job done. This is my definition of what a marathon involves. So that's that. Yeah, just a few stats on the races, how many steps, how many miles. So just marathon miles alone, that's nearly 35 million steps. And then as I've described to you, how much body weight you're putting through each of those steps, and the impact that has on your joints. Yeah, picture all the products I take. The stats, obviously. The better half of Team Edwards, always there for me at the end. Most run marathon I've ever ran is London, 25 finishes, and hopefully a 26th finish when I run in London in April, which will be marathon 998, by the way. And then these are a couple of my favourite quotes, which, yeah, if anyone's interested, I think they'll find those quite interesting. And I think that just about covers it, Catherine, and I'll be happy to answer any questions, basically.
Steve, that's brilliant. Thank you so much. If you could stop sharing, that'd be great. We'll get the full screen of everyone back. We had a couple of questions. One from Sharon, who wanted to ask about the products, which you've kind of mentioned, I think, already, which is wonderful. And Joseph B has come up with the question: is how do you manage to slow down the effect of the natural heart rate's threshold reduction over the years?
Oh gosh, can you just repeat that question? I just want to understand.
How do you manage to slow down the effect of the natural heart rate's threshold reduction over the years?
Slow down. I'm not sure I can answer that question because it's not something I've really.
Yeah.
I don't wear a heart monitor when I'm running. When I started running, there wasn't these devices around. I mean, when we first started running, there was no such thing as GPSs or heart rate monitors or anything like that. It was literally an old Casio watch, and you just stopped and started your stopwatch, and you learned to run how you felt. And that's what I've always done. I've run how I felt, and I know on any given day pretty much what sort of shape I'm in that day to how fast I can run. So yeah, I've kind of gone off spec, and it's always worked for me until now. So yeah.
That's great. I think it's sometimes how we look at things that the scientists in us want to know certain things, but you just get down and run really and look after your body, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
Someone has asked, could you kindly put up the slide with all the products in again? I think someone might want to take a quick picture of that, if that's possible.
Yeah. So share that. How's
Great.
that?
Things coming up. Here we go. Lovely.
Not
So,
sure that's all of them, but I think it's probably most of them. I don't use the sport as much. I don't really use the sport as much now, simply because I'm not really running the sort of times that I used to run. So I don't feel that I quite need what sport offered me anymore, but the bounce back definitely. So I'm probably taking a little bit more bounce back to whereas before I didn't take as much bounce back, but I took a bit more sport. So yeah, but the rest of the products, yeah, they're all pretty much the way they are. GI Pro's not on there, is it?
no.
But yeah, GI Pro, you can add that on there as well.
Oh, it is there. Sorry, is it at the top? Yeah, sorry, it is there.
Oh, is
Yeah.
it?
It's
Oh yeah, sorry,
designed,
yes, GI Zyme. Yes, that's the one. Yeah,
designed the
yeah, yeah,
omega 3s.
yep.
And it's interesting. I mean, I think everyone's fully understood what exactly you've had to go through. But what you didn't mention was through all these working years, Steve was working working in the computer industry as a programmer. So all these marathons were done around his job. If had it been, well, he was just sort of hanging around and he felt like running. So what we mentioned in the beginning that he might run half a marathon before he went to work, I don't think that was an exaggeration.
Yeah.
And could you explain just one time, so the timing you ran 3 marathons over the weekend, but one was in France, one was in Belgium. Could you just give us a 3-minute run through of what you actually had to do to get there?
Yeah, well, going back to 91, 92, when I went for the most marathons in a year, the running scene was totally different back then. There wasn't multi-day events. There wasn't there wasn't the number of events basically in the UK that there are today. So to achieve that record really meant traveling all over every other country you could get to try and run back-to-back marathons, whether that be sort of Saturday, Sunday, or Friday, Saturday, or whatever it was. So most weekends that year, I was pretty much, driving down, and there was no budget airlines, there was no internet. Logistically, it was it needed meticulous planning to get around the logistics. Never mind actually running. Actually became it became a point that when you arrived on the start line, that was the hard bit over. All you had to do was run a marathon after that. Getting to start line sometimes was harder than actually running the race. But yeah, literally, I mean, I'd drive, get the ferry from Ramsgate, usually to Dunkirk or Calais, and would either drive across France to Holland or Belgium or Germany to run a race on Saturday. Possibly getting back ready for Sunday to run a race in the UK, but not always. Sometimes it was a case of running somewhere else in another country. And the furthest journey I ever did was I went over on Friday night to run in Maassluis in Holland, and then from there drove all the way to Vienna. And I think I had about an hour's sleep and basically ran the Vienna Marathon, and then had to try and get back to the UK for Monday to get back to work. Didn't quite make it. I must have had the Monday off in the end. I ran out of fuel basically, and it was the middle of the night, and there was no petrol stations home, so it's a case of hanging around in the car, just sort of getting a bit of kip and waiting for a gas station to open in the morning. So and there was loads of tales like that, and loads of trips like that. I've driven to Denmark. Where else? So I drove around Copenhagen, but yeah, all over. Traveled thousands of miles that year in the car. If it had been today, I wouldn't have had to need to travel. But of course, you've got a budget airline, so the traveling's so much cheaper anyway. But back then, no, it was a case of car and ferry, I'm afraid. So yeah, logistically, it was just, yeah.
One thing I'd like to just underline before we move, as we're not having any more questions at the moment, is when we went to see Steve last year run a local marathon, you get the idea. There's a track, there's all organisations, there's clear ways to run. He was running along the Thames on a footpath while people were taking their walks with their kids and their dogs. I mean, it was absolutely phenomenal. And so it's not just missing the puddles and missing the trip ups, he's having to miss the kids and the dogs and the ice creams. I mean, honestly, that to me put it up to a whole new level, Steve, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
So I think we seem to have run out of questions. I just wanted to thank you enormously. And for anybody new on the call tonight, please don't hesitate. And if you're watching back in recording, don't hesitate to get in contact with the person with regards to the nutrition that Steve's mentioned, which, as you can see by the statistics, made such a huge, phenomenal difference in his running. And I just like one quick story. We were sitting in a hotel in Edinburgh a few years back, Steve. We were actually having a beer. We had a half a beer, which was rather nice. And I asked Steve more or less what was the most important step with regards, and as he said, it's turning up is the most important
First step.
It's the first step is turning up, and everyone thinks it's the step over the finishing line, but I think you said to me it's the first step over the start line, because once I know I've started, there is nothing on earth that's going to stop me. And that's very relevant to us tonight with regards to commitment about what we do. So if we were ever privileged, if there was ever anybody that would inspire us to carry on doing what we're doing in the way that Steve has to do, and the 6th of May, it's a bank holiday here in the UK. So there's absolutely no excuse for thousands of people to not be there, should I say, in my roundabout way. We're all going to be there. And I think I saw there's a small shout out to Steve's book, The Man in the Machine. And I believe there are some T-shirts for sale as well, Steve. I saw a post on Facebook today with regards to
Yeah, I mean, we've tried to keep it a secret because we just thought we should wear a special T-shirt, Teresa and I. And somebody replied to one of the posts after a marathon and said, "Oh, will you be having a special T-shirt on the day?" I thought, well, I've not told anyone, so that's just, someone's just picked up on the fact that I might have a special. And I said, well, yeah, there will be. And then he just said out of the blue, I'd like to wear one. And then somebody else said afterwards on the following post, they said, well, I wouldn't mind one of those as well. So I thought, well, I'll put the question out. If people would like one, then yeah. When I put the order in, which will be towards the end of this week, then yeah, I'm happy to order extras. And yeah, if people would like to, then that's brilliant, and it would be a great memento. Obviously, there will be a memento after the event for everybody, and I just hope that the weather's good and it's a great day and everything goes to plan. And I really can't thank everyone enough for all their support. Basically, it's been fantastic. Support is massively important, and at times, it's not all been plain sailing. Some people think they don't really see what goes on behind the scenes and all the hard work and the effort. So to get that support and sort of get people's feedback, it's really been brilliant. So just thank you everyone who's helped keep me motivated along the way. Really appreciate it.
Brilliant. Steph, can you save the chat, please, or can someone save the chat so we've got something so Steve can see all this phenomenal back and support that we have. So with that, guys, I think Catherine's waving. I think it's time to say goodnight to you all. Steve, yeah, just thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you again for having me.
I'll see you all on the 6th of May, guys. Good night.